Hello, this is John welcoming you to the 1964th edition of the Enfield Talking Newspaper. Dateline, 31st of July 2014. The readers this week are another John, Anna, Angela and me, with Robin on the controls. The items that we will be reading come from our local newspapers, the Enfield Gazette and Advertiser and the Enfield Independent, and are their copyright. Our title music is Country Rock Polka, composed by Pat Prilly, Fernand Bouillon, Harry Brewer, and performed by Jean-Jacques Perry, and is used with his kind permission. Local stories include what it is like to be 102 years old, the Edmonton Festival, misuse of the A10, and a newly appointed local female priest. Firstly, an update about the Blue Badge concessionary parking scheme. It was brought to our attention that Enfield Council no longer contact Blue Badge holders to let them know that they need to renew their badges. One of our members received a fine as he didn't realise that his badge had passed its expiry date. Enfield Vision took up this matter with Enfield Council, and we asked the concessionary travel team to assist their visually impaired residents to renew their blue badges in time to avoid any fines or penalties, and they should provide an alternative to online application. As Diane de Jersey has reported in her chair's message, the concessionary travel team has responded positively to our correspondence and has assured us that it will assist the visually impaired people by issuing renewal letters from January 2015. And they have offered assistance in filling the Blue Badge online applications. If you are experiencing any problems receiving your Enfield Talking newspaper, please phone Diane de Jersey on 020-8805-6578. She is your listener's representative and will be pleased to help you. Now Anna will read the first item of local news.
One of the first female priests in the borough is revelling in the challenges that she faces. The Reverend Hazel Meal, 65, was ordained the first female priest at Christ Church in the Green, Southgate, one of the oldest churches in the borough, dating back 4 centuries. It has been a long, arduous journey for Reverend Meal. Following 6 years as a church warden, 2 years as a deacon, she also studied for a degree in contextual theology for 2 years. Speaking to the Enfield Independent inside the Grand Church, Reverend Meal said, "I was more relieved than anything once I became ordained. Usually when you do your training, you end up staying at the church you were sent to. But I always wanted to come back here because it is a very warm place and somewhere I have always felt a part of." Studying at St. Mellitus, the new priest will be taking on more responsibility as the current vicar, Peter Jackson, is set to leave. She said, "It is going to be very challenging, but I am up for it. There is fantastic support here at the church." There has been a heated debate at the Church of England on whether women can be ordained as bishops. The newly ordained priest is happy to see the synod support the case for women bishops. She said, "There has been an attitude shift over the past few years, and I think it is very good that the issue is being backed. It is similar to the previous campaigns of doctors and lawyers, but a few generations later. There is a caring element to all 3 aspects, and it will be great to see more and more women priests and bishops in the future."
Organisers of the Edmonton Summer Festival hope their event helped to reignite community spirit. 3 days of music, theatre and entertainment ended on Sunday evening at Pym's Park in Victoria Road, Edmonton. Formerly known as the Spellbound Festival, which took place in Jubilee Park last year, this was the first festival to be held in the park since the days of the Edmonton Summer Theatre in the 1970s and the 1980s. Paul Everett, chief organiser and manager of Millfield's Art Centre, told the Enfield Independent he hoped that the 3-day event would reignite community spirit in Edmonton and bring the borough together. He said, "There has been a lot of bad news in Edmonton lately, and we want the people to know that this is not what it's always like to be here. I think the people of Edmonton can surprise themselves by coming out and having a great time." As well as the plethora of cultural shows, a number of stalls ranging from bread businesses to free arts and craft sessions were made available to anyone who came along. The traditional fun fair was also in full swing, with zorbing and boxing available for children. Local talent such as Ellen Blaine and Alicia Lee performed during the weekend, as well as the Urban Music Awards winner Omar, who appeared on Sunday. Mr. Everett added, "We want to bring back the roots of the Edmonton Summer Theatre, and it's great to see people coming out to enjoy the fabulous acts we have on show. We would love to see people coming from all over the borough to portray the beauty that this park in Edmonton has. There is a divide in the borough, but we hope festivals like this can break the divide. There is so much talent and culture in Edmonton, and we are celebrating that." Jennifer Wheeler of Hazelbury Road said, "It's great that everything is in the park this weekend because nothing really happens here. You always see a lot of festivals in Enfield town, but it's nice to have so many things to do here, and a lot of it is free."
Adrenaline junkies are continuing to use a busy dual carriageway as a racetrack, despite police threatening to put the brakes on their speeding. People living close to and along the A10 Great Cambridge Road in Enfield say they are fed up with the constant drag races that take place every Sunday evening. The Enfield Independent reported in July 2013 that police had issued a warning to racers that if they were to speed down the 3-mile stretch, they would be brought to justice. But, 1 year on, residents are yet to see any improvement to this motoring mecca, which has seen people from all over the country flock to the A Road to race their customised cars. Cleanthus Pappas, who lives adjacent to the A10, told the Enfield Independent that the craze started more than 7 years ago. He said, "I used to work night shifts and I would see this happening, but the noise from my home is unbearable. We have double glazing and you can still hear it until the early hours of the morning. In the daytime you barely hear the A10. If my car did 80 miles an hour down the A10, you might not hear it. But these people have illegally souped up cars which make so much noise. I haven't seen any improvement in the last year. Things have just stayed at the same level." The police stated last summer that they would show no tolerance to people using the road as a racing playground. One traffic officer said, "We want people to know that we will seize people's cars and they will lose their insurance. We will utilise every means at our disposal to make this a safer borough." However, Mr. Pappas claims that there are not enough police on the road trying to stop the racing from happening. He said, "The police told me that they don't have enough staff to cover the road. The speed cameras are also essentially useless because people are putting reflective materials on their licence plates and the cameras are not up to date, which means they are not digital and not always able to catch people. This is going to end in a disaster and someone will be killed. I hope it doesn't take something like that to trigger a response." Rajesh Kilari, who lives on the A10, said, "It is so bad at the weekends it ruins my evenings. This isn't some unorganised bunch who come down every now and then. They are there every Sunday night. The police know they are there, and yet nothing happens. I cannot understand why no action is taken. We have the sound of motor racing at our doorsteps, and we aren't close to a racetrack." A Metropolitan Police spokesman said, "Police patrol the A10 and the retail park areas and their car parks routinely and will take appropriate action against those committing speeding offences."
A 102-year-old's positivity is the secret to her long life, her daughter has revealed. Irene Osborne of Cruise Hill has lived in Enfield since she was 7. Mrs. Osborne has also written a book about her experiences in the borough and how it has changed over the years. Dorothy said she has rose-tinted glasses and a phenomenal outlook on life. She has been a hit with literally everything, but she is still going, she has been hit with literally everything, but she is still going and I am very proud. Speaking to the Enfield Independent, Dorothy also said that one of her mother's greatest enjoyments is going to Age UK's luncheons every Friday. Dorothy added, "She goes every Friday and it is the highlight of her week." Among her other hobbies, Irene continues to bake cakes and has enjoyed watching the Commonwealth Games during the last week. She was, of course, a mere 2-year-old 100 years ago when the Great War started, And now we have a series of stories about Enfield and the start of the Great War in 1914.
While people normally associate German bombs falling on London with the Blitz of 1940-41, the capital was also attacked from the air during World War I. The danger posed to Londoners came from a fleet of German airships which started bombing Britain in January 1915. The first time such an airship was brought down in this country was on September 3rd, 1916. During the early hours of that morning, the enemy launched a raid on North London with a fearsome airship called a Schütterlands SL-11, commonly known as a Zeppelin, which was commanded by Hauptmann Wilhelm Schramm. While it is believed that the raid was aimed at the City of London, the airship did not drop its bombs there. Instead, SL-11 deposited one bomb on Cruise Hill Golf Club in Cattlegate Road, Enfield, 9 bombs on the stud farm in Clay Hill, Enfield, and another near the Enfield Isolation Hospital in World's End Lane, Winchmore Hill, and on Oak Lodge Farm in Chase Road, Oakwood. It also dropped a number of bombs on Edmonton, Ponders End, and Enfield Highway. But as the German crew released 12 explosive bombs towards Forty Hill and Turkey Street, the airship came under fire from a BE-2C plane flown by 21-year-old Lieutenant William Leaf Robinson. Flying underneath the German bomber, the pilot fired 2 drums of incendiary bullets into its body, but to no avail. However, his final round of bullets set the back of the airship on fire. The burning airship, the body of which was made of wood, could be seen from miles away as it fell earthwards. It eventually crashed into a field in Cuffley, Hertfordshire, behind the Plough Inn pub. Contrary to expectation, it was not easy to ignite the hydrogen used to power these airships with standard bullets and shrapnel. The Allies only started to exploit their vulnerability to fire when a combination of explosive and incendiary ammunition was introduced in 1916. The Pomeroy incendiary bullets used to bring the airship down were produced under great secrecy at Ely's cartridge factory at Angel Road, Edmonton. 3 horses died during the raid, but residents escaped unharmed. A souvenir booklet from that time dedicated to the downing of the airship includes a photograph of Lieutenant Robinson, noting that he attacked the Zeppelin under circumstances of great difficulty and danger and sent it crashing to the ground as a flaming wreck. The bodies of the 16-strong German crew were later buried in Potter's Bar. In the 1960s, they were dug up and reburied at the German War Cemetery in Cannock Chase, Staffordshire. Lieutenant Robinson, who died in 1918 from the effects of Spanish flu, received a Victoria Cross for his heroics. The loss of the SL-11 is credited with ending the German army's enthusiasm for such bombing raids.
Jobs, money, power and unimaginable wealth are amongst the sometimes unexpected consequences of war. Although it is uncomfortable to imagine that some people would profit from death and destruction, the reality is that the industrial scale of military manufacturing brought prosperity to the Lee Valley during World War I. As men lay dying in the trenches of northern France, production of the Lee Enfield rifles, the standard issue weapon given to the British and Commonwealth troops, went into overdrive. Nearly 2 million of the rifles were churned out at the plant in what is now known as Enfield Island Village, and thousands of workers manned machines around the clock to keep the British Army stocked with weapons. With the small arms factory knocking out guns at an industrial rate, along with the Royal Gunpowder Mills in Waltham Abbey and the Shell Works in Wharf Road, Ponders End, a military industry was born. According to historian Jim Lewis, these factories became hot houses of invention and design. The First World War was really what we would recognize as the first modern war in terms of technology, he said. The technologies were developed, such as cordite, produced in the Royal Gunpowder Mills, would have happened anyway, but war pushed them along. Mr. Lewis suspects that along with the inventions from the Lee Valley, such as cordite and the Lee Enfield rifle, a more sinister weapon was being prepared behind tightly shut doors in a chemical plant in Ponders End: mustard gas. It is something I can't get to the bottom of, he admitted. We know that the Shell Works in Ponders End expanded by a third during this time, and we know that Britain did produce mustard gas because it was trialled in Porton Down in Wiltshire. We also know that Britain used mustard gas, and in fact, in the Battle of Gaza in 1917, about 10,000 canisters were deployed. Shells were needed to contain this gas, and opposite the shell works, there was a chemical plant called Mawson's. Records show that the production increased dramatically in the period of the First World War, and I would suggest that this increase in production was not more cough mixture. Mr. Lewis feels the discovery of a sample bottle purported to contain mustard gas in the factory in the 1950s, and the fact that Winston Churchill, a chemical warfare advocate, visited the factory in 1916 suggests that Enfield could have produced one of the most notorious weapons of war. The once mighty small arms factory is now surrounded by hundreds of newly built homes, and the Lee Valley that once would have been thick with the sounds and smells of industry is starting to be reclaimed by nature. With herons spotted spearing fish in the shallows of the River Lee, a sight unthinkable just 100 years ago.
With millions of men dying for their country during World War I, a particular resentment was reserved for those who refused to fight. Once conscription was introduced in early 1916 due to the sheer scale of the deaths on the front line, those who objected to war on moral grounds were abused for being conchies, or handed white feathers in a bid to publicly humiliate them for their perceived cowardice. Those men who refused to go to war on grounds of conscientious objection faced an impossible situation. If their application for exemption was refused, many were still forced to either join up and fight or face long jail sentences. As records published online from the National Archives at Kew show, it was frequently a complex process. Draftsman William Brown, 31, of Edenbridge Road, Bush Hill Park, applied for exemption on the grounds that I hold most strong views on the sacredness of human life and cannot under any circumstances take upon myself the duty of killing or assisting in the process of killing my fellow human beings. He added that the strength of his convictions made it a physical impossibility for him to do anything other than follow his conscience. An Edmonton tribunal granted him exemption from combatant service, but because he did not want to be connected in any way to the killing machine of war, he appealed against the decision, demanding an absolute exemption from anything that would contribute to the canker of hatred that is eating into the nations of Europe. In his letter of appeal, he wrote, "No dispute justifies the taking of life, the destruction of nature, and the wasting of human energies." Despite his impassioned plea, a Central Appeal Tribunal not only turned down his request for an absolute exemption, but also withdrew his certificate of exemption from combatant duty. The opposite was true for James Bull, 22, of Sydney Road, Enfield, who applied for an exemption on moral grounds. An Enfield tribunal ruled that his claim on conscientious grounds was not genuine, but advanced purely to escape military service. Undeterred, Mr. Bull submitted an appeal. In his letter, he wrote that he was a follower of Jesus Christ and that for him there was no distinction between combatant and non-combatant service. Following a ruling by the Appeal Tribunal in Westminster in central London, he was granted exemption from combatant service. By the first week of June 1916, Southgate Tribunal had received 587 claims for exemption from military service, but it refused to grant a single absolute exemption.
When World War I broke out, many said it would be over by Christmas. But by the end of the year, and with the start of trench warfare in mainland Europe, it became obvious that this was wishful thinking. As casualties on the battlefields mounted, increasing numbers of soldiers were being brought back to British shores for treatment. Makeshift and more permanent military hospitals sprang up everywhere. In Enfield, the main place where wounded soldiers received treatment was the Edmonton Military Hospital in Silver Street, known today as North Middlesex University Hospital. The first hospital buildings were constructed on the present-day site in 1909, and the Edmonton Infirmary, as it was then called, was founded in 1910 under First Medical Officer Dr. Spencer Mort and First Matron Annie Dowbigin. The hospital had 12 wards and 2 ambulances. In April 1914, the hospital was renamed the Edmonton Military Hospital, and the following month, wounded combatants started arriving at the then Edmonton Low-Level Station, from where they were taken to the hospital. Crowds gathered to greet the injured men as they passed through Hartford Road and Silver Street. The hospital provided care for soldiers and civilians and had 2,000 beds to treat the casualties. Between May 1915 and May 1918, 32,248 wounded servicemen were treated at the hospital. Many of them died, and they were buried at Edmonton Cemetery in Church Street. As the war went on, the need for medical facilities increased. In March 1917, St. Mark's Institute in Bush Hill Park became a military hospital with 50 beds, and an emergency hospital with 40 beds was set up in Elm House in Gentleman's Row, Enfield. Groveland's House in Southgate became a military hospital in 1916, and Totten Hall School in Palmer's Green was used for this purpose between 1916 and 1919. Edmonton Military Hospital was renamed North Middlesex in 1920. During World War II, it was bombed by the Nazis, but continued to provide treatment for injured soldiers. Today, the buildings have become the Hospital Trust headquarters, and its foundation stone is still visible in the facade.
The Ponders End Shell Works provided one of Enfield's most crucial contributions to the World War I effort. The massive munitions factory was built in Wharf Road in 1915 in response to the shell crisis caused by a huge increase in the demand for shells on the Western Front. In May 1915, Chancellor of the Exchequer, David Lloyd George, was made Minister of Munitions in a new department created to solve the munitions shortage. Using grants from the ministry, the factory was expanded and employed 6,000 people to work day and night, including a large number of girls and women. In the first half of 1916 alone, 600,000 8-inch shells were produced there. The shells were taken to the front line, where they were fired from heavy mortars, many of which were produced at the Royal Arsenal in Woolwich, south-east London. Winston Churchill, who succeeded Lloyd George as Minister of Munitions, visited the factory in September 1917 to encourage its workers and underline the importance of their work to the war effort. The factory closed in 1919 and many of the buildings were sold off or demolished.
Manager George Borg believes that Enfield Town has pulled off a coup by securing the loan signing of goalkeeper Nathan MacDonald. The dislocated shoulder that Noel Imber suffered in the closing weeks of last season forced Town to search for a new keeper, and they have filled the void by bringing in MacDonald, who has been in the England C squad from Skrill Conference Premier outfit Braintree Town. MacDonald, who is set to spend all season with Town, made his first appearance for the club in Saturday's pre-season friendly against SK Beveren, and Borg was thrilled to have captured his services. Nathan is our player for the season and we're delighted that he has come to us, Borg said. I think it's a real coup that we've managed to get a player of his quality. I'm really pleased with all the players that we brought in and things are looking very good. Borg is also set to appoint Bradley Quinton as his assistant after the experienced midfielder left Braintree to join Town on a full-time basis. Quinton came to Town on a dual registration deal last season after Borg took over as manager and filled a player-coach role. However, his decision to leave Braintree has led to Borg choosing to name Quinton as his assistant, although a long-standing knee problem means he is unlikely to feature on the pitch on a regular basis. It will be great to have Bradley on board as my assistant, the manager added. Bradley and I have got a great understanding and I think it's going to work out really well. He is 35 now and his knee is starting to play up, so I don't think he'll be playing that regularly, but if we need him, then he may be available. Meanwhile, Town eased to a comfortable 4-0 win in their friendly against Beveren in Belgium on Saturday, with Liam Hope, Neil Cousins, Jamie Richards and Corey Whiteley scoring the goals. The trip to Belgium also saw outgoing chairman Paul Millington lay a wreath at the Menin Gate at Ypres, one of the memorials to those who fell in Flanders, to pay respects to the people who lost their lives in World War I. The visit to Ypres brought home to us the great sacrifice that others made, Millington said. It was poignant that the spot where the wreath was laid was near the name of Charles Blake, a player for England, for Enfield, who lost his life in 1917, aged just 26. We have built a great friendship with YBSK Beveren, and without the sacrifice made by Charles and so many others, that may not have been possible. Last night's pre-season friendly at home to Boreham Wood was cancelled after an ongoing maintenance on the pitch at the Queen Elizabeth Stadium, which meant that the pitch itself was not in a playable condition.
A head teacher is celebrating after taking her school out of special measures in less than 18 months. Helen Pearson, head teacher at De Bowen Primary School in Green Road, Southgate, is also rejoicing after the school's Key Stage 2 SATS results for maths rocketed from 42nd in the borough to the 8th best. The school's Ofsted inspection in May 2014 saw it come out of special measures after it was found failing in October 2012. The school's latest SATS results were also higher than the Enfield average for reading, writing and science at Key Stage 2, that's years 3 to 6. Looking back at her time since joining the school in December 2012, Ms Pearson said, "The school went into special measures in October 2012, but we came out of that in May 2014. We are absolutely delighted to go from a failing school to 8th in the borough for maths. It's tremendous. They have put us into requires improvement for learning, but they have given us a good rating, Ofsted's second highest, for leadership and management, and a good for children's safety, which is really positive. Had they come back after the SATS results, we would have got a good across the board." Visitors to the school see a London bus depicted on the wall travelling up the first staircase, with each stop the next target for the school. Miss Pearson added, "The school is completely different. The attitude to learning from children and teaching has really improved, and there is a good structure in place now. We have the bus going up the mountain on display, and this really visualises for the children what we need to do to become outstanding. They, the children, are very proud of what they have done. The school was in a dark place, but we have come away from that now." The head teacher also told the Enfield Independent that the 300-pupil school has spaces across the board for any parents struggling to find a place for their child. She said, "The school gets a reputation after being put in special measures, and that can take a long time to recover from. We have outstanding teachers here, and we have school places across the years, and we welcome anyone who wants to join our journey. Next time the inspectors come, I would like good across the board with some outstanding features."
We have now reached the end of side 1 of this tape. Please stop your machine now, take out the cassette, turn it over and start side 2.